and then even putting aside just the regular comings and goings, there are these events that I love. I loved riding with my kids with Time's Up and family bike rides and Critical Mass.
Yes.
The New Year's Eve ride.
Five Borough, right? There's so
Five Borough
much.
bike tour, absolutely. We'd go rogue. That was before I was on the board. We'd not pay and we'd just sort of ride along. We could do that.
Can't do that now. You have to.
That's right. There was a family bike parade in Astoria that they would run for many years. I don't think they're doing it anymore, but I remember my daughter, she was just like 3 or 4 years old on her little bike, but we had one of those like broom poles with a horse's head, like a plush horse's head on the front. So we taped it onto the head tube, and she was dressed up like a princess.
I love it.
And we went riding out there.
Imagine if you had a cargo bike. Oh my gosh, the costumes or decorations for your bike would have been amazing.
She was so proud. Like she felt like she was really on a horse,
Love that. And I think this is a great point, time to point out that cargo biking and biking infrastructure in New York is changing. You're seeing more and more families who are biking and parents who have invested in cargo bikes because I think a lot of the city, maybe it's not changing fast enough, but we're seeing more protected bike lanes. We're seeing, more cyclists. We're seeing more community. We're seeing the development of, new bike lanes. And it's like an exciting time to be a cyclist in New York City, I think.
Absolutely. And, it didn't happen overnight.
No.
Honestly, it took decades to get us to where we are now. And that's something that I think people who don't bicycle are only dimly aware of. They may sort of look around suddenly and they say, wait, where are all these bike lanes coming from? And where are all these cyclists coming from? They may elide the distinction between people who are working, delivering food on their bikes, which is something, to talk about. It's a real thing that raises issues with families who are trying to get around on bicycle. But the fact is, the reason there's so much more bicycling activity now in New York City than there was 20 years ago is twofold, because it's a natural urban form of transportation that's efficient, effective, affordable. And secondly, because people like us have done so much to make the city safer to bike in.
And how do you think people can do more? Like, how do we continue this advocacy to build more?
There is a whole ecosystem of cycling organizations in New York that people need to be aware of, and right at the center of them are Transportation Alternatives, which is the one that runs the campaigns, the community neighborhood campaigns to get particular dangerous arterial streets safer for cyclists so that they can be used for that purpose, as well as working on broader policy issues. There's Families for Safe Streets, which sadly is composed primarily of people who've lost a family member to traffic violence, but can speak with great moral force about, just the insanity of how we accept, hundreds of traffic deaths a year in New York City every year because we prioritize motor vehicle traffic on our streets. There's Bike New York, which has a tremendous bicycle education program, free learn to ride classes for kids and adults, has taught, at this point, probably hundreds of thousands of children and adults in New York City to ride bikes, including through the public school system.
That's
where
amazing.
They have a mandatory bike PE program in some pilot schools that they're trying to expand. I could go on and on. There's a group called Young Majors, which is a collaboration between New York Cycle Club and Major Taylor Iron Riders, which is an African-American cycling club. We put kids out on road bikes. We donate road bikes to kids, and think about it, juvenile-sized road bikes, that's a big investment. There aren't many people ready to make that investment, but we raise money in the cycling community because people see the benefits of that. And I was just so happy to get a message on Instagram from someone who had been in the Young Majors program.
Really? What'd they say?
In its second or third year. They said, I loved it and I want to do the full-on adult level training that New York Cycle Club gives to road cyclists each year. It's called the SIG, the Special Interest Program. He's like, Steve, you were there. I saw your law firm was a sponsor of Major Taylor Iron Riders. And I did the program and now I want to do the SIG. Are you going to let me in? I'm only 16. I'm like, Oh my God, I'm so glad to be.
That's amazing, right? It's like, there's these organizations, but there's community, right? We have a community of cyclists, and I think that whatever stage of cyclist you are, however you identify as a gravel cyclist, as a mom, right? Is that we're kind of all in it together, and I think that's a very unique element of the biking culture, is that we like to get together and talk about bikes, right? And be together.
It's true. I mean, I do kind of balance that against the fact that we're not necessarily all in it together. There was a time when it was like that, and now bicycling has grown to the extent that in addition to being the most efficient way to getting around New York, it's also the most efficient and profitable way to deliver food.
That's pretty
and
amazing.
Other things in New York, which I think is a good thing, but I totally accept the idea that when a certain activity, when done privately or with your family, should be handled in one way and regulated and supported in a particular way. If it's being done on a for-profit basis, there's going to be a higher degree of regulation. There's a different set of incentives for people. And, so I think we're at the moment where we have to start saying there's different types of biking, and it's not just one biking community, because if we don't, we're going to end up in a situation where people will not make the distinctions that they need to make amongst the different kinds of biking and the different kinds of regulation that are appropriate for them that will keep everyone happy and safe.
Yeah.
Are you with me on that one?
I'm with you. I think the idea that we don't want to be grouped into all of us together, like some of us making better choices than others, is what you're saying. Like some people might be really fast on their e-bikes or whatever. But I think that, ultimately what we really want is the same things. All of the cyclists want safe infrastructure,